What happened in the congressional hearing room yesterday will go down as one of the most devastating political moments of the year. Senator Tommy Tuberville thought a laugh would be enough to silence Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett forever. Instead, that dismissive chuckle triggered a response he never saw coming, one that completely unraveled his reputation in front of the nation. The Alabama senator believed he had cornered the Texas Democrat, mocking her military knowledge as if she were out of her depth. But Crockett didn't just push back. She revealed a truth rooted in her own family's sacrifice, and the room fell into stunned silence. For months, military families across America had been watching this battle play out. Promotions delayed, retirement plans disrupted. Children left in limbo as politicians played games with their parents' careers. Tuberville, at the center of the storm, had grown confident after months of defending his blockade on military promotions. In his mind, it was just politics. What he never understood was Jasmine Crockett's deeper connection to the issue. Tuberville's staff had prepared him with opposition research, studying her legal career and policy positions. But they missed the one fact that mattered most. Crockett grew up the daughter of a decorated combat veteran. Her father, Master Sergeant James Crockett, served 3 tours in Vietnam and spent 22 years in the Air Force before retiring with full honors. His lessons on service and sacrifice shaped her life, and in that hearing, they became the weapon that Tuberville could not defend against. Tuberville entered the chamber with the swagger of a former football coach turned senator, convinced his tough talk made him the ultimate defender of military values. But Crockett exposed the truth. While he talked about discipline from the sidelines, she lived the sacrifices through her own family. While he used the troops as a political football, she carried the moral authority of someone who knew the cost of service firsthand. The clash was supposed to be another partisan skirmish over defense spending. Instead, it became something much larger. A showdown between political posturing and authentic experience. In the end, Tuberville's laughter wasn't remembered as a sign of confidence, but as the moment he underestimated both Jasmine Crockett and the power of genuine military sacrifice. The military's chain of command had ground to a halt. Senior officers who should have been stepping into leadership roles were left stranded, while junior officers began questioning whether military service still offered the stability and advancement their families needed. The political gridlock had a human cost that could no longer be ignored. Mental health counselors on bases reported rising anxiety as service members worried about stalled careers, shrinking finances, and uncertain futures. The very men and women who dedicated their lives to defending America now found their own security threatened, not by foreign enemies, but by political maneuvering in Washington. The stakes could not have been higher. Families across the nation were watching this hearing closely, desperate to see whether their leaders stood with service members or played games with their lives. The hearing room itself became the stage for this struggle. The gallery was packed with military spouses, veterans, and children, some wearing pins for deployed loved ones, others clutching photographs of those directly harmed by promotion delays. Their presence turned the proceeding into something far more than a routine debate. It was personal, urgent, and raw. Tuberville had already sparred with several Democrats that morning. Each time he leaned on his trademark Alabama charm, tossing out folksy quips that played to his base, but infuriated families in the gallery. He seemed to treat the hearing like a football game, where quick banter and a winning grin could outmaneuver opponents. But the audience wasn't laughing. They were living the consequences. One senator's obstruction had left families without answers, careers in limbo, and futures on hold. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was ready. Her staff had spent The week gathering evidence. Stories of officers delaying retirement, families unable to move, children's education plans upended. She had every statistic, every testimony, ready at hand. Yet the most powerful weapon she carried wasn't data. It was the letter her father, a decorated veteran, had written the night before. When it was her turn to speak, Crockett's tone was steady and precise, her words honed like a lawyer building a case. "Senator Tuberville," she began, locking eyes with him, "can you explain to the military families watching at home why their loved ones are being denied promotions because of your personal political agenda?" The room froze. No soft preamble, no political pleasantries. Just the question military families had been asking for months, now voiced directly in the chamber. Tuberville leaned back with a smirk, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. "Well, Congresswoman," he drawled, "I appreciate your concern, but I'm not sure someone who's never been around military folks would understand the complex decisions we have to make here." The silence that followed was electric. Everyone knew Crockett was about to deliver the blow that would change everything. The room shifted uneasily. Crockett's expression remained calm, but a flash in her eyes warned of danger. "Senator," she said evenly, "are you suggesting I don't understand military issues?" Tuberville grinned, convinced he had her, cornered. "I'm just saying, Congresswoman, coaching young men, including plenty of veterans, gives you perspective on real service. Some people talk about supporting the troops, but they've never been in the trenches." A few Republicans chuckled. Tuberville was playing his base, using football to mask his lack of military service, while undermining Crockett's authority. But Crockett didn't blink. "With all due respect, Senator, coaching football is not the same as combat. And hurting military families for politics isn't supporting the troops. It's using them as pawns." The air grew heavy. Tuberville's grin faltered, his good old boy charm slipping. "I've spent my career around warriors. Real warriors," he snapped. "Maybe if you'd spent less time in courtrooms and more time with service members, you'd understand." Then came the mistake. Tuberville laughed, not a chuckle, a loud mocking laugh that echoed through the chamber, belittling her. It was the kind of laugh that said, "This little lawyer thinks she can lecture me about the military." Crockett's voice sharpened like steel. "Something funny, Senator?" The smirk faded. Democrats leaned forward. Republicans shifted uneasily. The air crackled. Everyone sensed Tuberville had walked into a trap. Crockett stood, reaching for a sealed envelope. "Since my military knowledge amuses you, let me share something with you, and with every family watching at home." This letter was written by someone who knows exactly what real service looks like. Someone who gave 22 years to this country while you were coaching football. The room fell silent. Staffers stopped writing. Cameras zoomed in. Military families leaned forward, tears in their eyes. This was no longer political theater. It was a reckoning. "This letter," Crockett continued, "is from my father, Master Sergeant James Crockett, United States Air Force, retired, a man who served 3 tours in Vietnam, a Bronze Star recipient, and the man who taught me what it truly means to serve." The words landed like thunder. Veterans in the gallery nodded solemnly. Every credential, 3 Vietnam tours, a Bronze Star, decades of service, spoke louder than Tuberville's laugh could ever hope to. Politicians, no matter their resumes, simply hadn't earned what was now commanding the room. Silence wrapped the chamber. Phones were raised, recording what was clearly history in the making. Tuberville sat frozen, the swagger gone from his face. Crockett opened the envelope with deliberate care, each motion steady and precise. The letter itself was simple, handwritten on plain stationery, but everyone understood it carried the weight of something extraordinary. "Senator Tuberville," she began, her voice now ringing with decades of service not her own but inherited. "My father wanted me to read this to you personally, since you believe I don't understand military matters." She unfolded the page. "To Senator Tommy Tuberville, I am Master Sergeant James Crockett, retired United States Air Force. I write through my daughter because your words and actions have insulted every service member and every military family in this country." The impact was immediate. Tuberville's face drained of color. A few Republicans shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't politics. This was personal and devastating. Crockett read on, her father's voice carried through her. "Senator, you laughed at my daughter's knowledge of military affairs. Let me tell you what she knows that you clearly don't. She knows that blocking promotions doesn't prove a point. It destroys careers. She knows that every stalled advancement means children struggling, spouses straining, and families wondering why their sacrifice is treated like a bargaining chip." The chamber was still but alive with tension. Even the cameras seemed to lean closer, as if aware they were capturing something unforgettable. "My daughter knows these things because I taught her. I taught her. After 3 tours in Vietnam, I taught her while burying the brothers I lost. I taught her that we don't serve politicians who play games. We serve the idea that America is worth the cost." Tuberville's hand twitched as if to object, but Crockett pressed forward, her father's words gaining force. "You coached football for 30 years. I respect that. But coaching young men to play a game is not the same as leading them into combat. It is not the same as holding a dying soldier. It is not the same as writing to mothers who will never see their sons again." The words landed like blows. Tears welled in the eyes of military families in the gallery. Even hardened political veterans lowered their gaze. You want to know what real military knowledge looks like? It's knowing that every promotion you block threatens a family's future. It's understanding that political games ripple through communities built on sacrifice you've never made. Crockett's voice sharpened as she read the letter's closing lines. "My daughter doesn't just study these issues. She lived them. She grew up watching her mother fear for my life, year after year, while you were drawing plays on a chalkboard. You laughed at her. But that laugh insulted every veteran, every service member, and every military family in this nation. My daughter has more understanding of military sacrifice in her little finger than you will ever claim in your career. She doesn't wave the flag for applause. She works to honor those who carry it. The next time you want to laugh at someone's military knowledge, Senator, remember, some of us earned it in blood, sweat, and sacrifice, not by coaching football." Crockett lowered the page. The signature was plain but thunderous. Master Sergeant James Crockett, United States Air Force, retired. Proud father of Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. The silence that followed was profound, the kind that comes when truth is so sharp it cuts through politics itself. No rebuttal was possible. No spin could reach it. For the first time in his career, Tommy Tuberville had nothing to say. The moment laid bare something fundamental. The gulf between those who had earned the right to speak about military sacrifice through lived experience and those who merely assumed that right through political status, the effect rippled across the chamber. In the gallery, military families sat with tears streaming down their faces, finally hearing their struggles spoken aloud with dignity and authority. Some reached for each other's hands, overwhelmed by the validation Master Sergeant Crockett's words carried. Even staffers, usually absorbed in notes and strategy, sat frozen, their pens still. Veteran lawmakers who had weathered decades of political theater knew instantly this was no ordinary exchange. This was raw moral authority, cutting through the noise with devastating clarity. Even the press gallery, normally alive with whispers and analysis, had fallen utterly silent. Reporters simply listened, hearing not politics, but the voice of a father defending his daughter and, through her, every military family in America. Tuberville sat rigid, his face crimson, his hands clenched on the table. Moments earlier he had been smug and dismissive. Now he looked as though he had been struck. His lips parted, but no words followed. The silence weighed heavy, broken only by Crockett folding the letter with deliberate care. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, cutting through the air with conviction. "Senator Tuberville, my father wanted me to tell you that your laughter was heard by military families across this nation. They heard you mock the daughter of a Vietnam veteran. They heard you dismiss someone who has dedicated her life to fighting for their rights. And they will not forget." She fixed her eyes on him. "Do you have anything to say to my father, Senator? Any response to a man who actually served this country while you were coaching football?" Tuberville's reply came out in a whisper. I have great respect for your father's service. I never meant to—" "You never meant to what?" Crockett cut in, her voice sharp. "You never meant to laugh? You never meant to dismiss military families? You never meant to use your office to play politics with their lives?" The chamber held its breath, but Tuberville had nothing left. The swagger he had carried in with him was gone, replaced by the silence of defeat. When the hearing adjourned, whispers spread like wildfire. Seasoned political veterans admitted they had never seen anything like it. Tuberville slipped away, without speaking to reporters, his press availability cancelled, his staff scrambling to contain the damage. But it was too late. Within minutes, clips of Crockett reading her father's letter flooded social media. The hashtag Master Sergeant Crockett letter trended instantly as veterans and military families shared their own stories. The most replayed moment, the exact second Tuberville's confident smirk vanished, was already becoming iconic. What he thought was a clever laugh now stood exposed as cruel, shallow, and ignorant. In the days after the confrontation, the ripple effects were unmistakable. When Master Sergeant Crockett's words about real military sacrifice were contrasted with Tuberville's laughter, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Military, family support groups across the country began posting their responses. Gold Star mothers shared the video, calling the letter a reflection of their own lived experiences. Years of sacrifice often brushed aside by politicians who claimed to support the troops, but never understood their real needs. Active duty, families detailed how Tuberville's holds on promotions had directly harmed their lives, offering painful concrete examples of stalled careers, financial strain, and uncertainty. Even conservative veterans, many of whom had backed Tuberville, found themselves in a bind. Master Sergeant Crockett's letter forced a hard reckoning. The gap between political posturing and actual service. Several major veteran organizations issued statements demanding a more respectful dialogue about military families, and less political gamesmanship at their expense. The media could not ignore it. National coverage highlighted the raw authenticity of the moment. Pundits struggled to spin it through partisan lenses because the issue transcended party politics. This was not Democrat versus Republican. It was authentic military service versus empty theater. Major newspapers ran profiles of Master Sergeant James Crockett, 3 tours in Vietnam, a Bronze Star, and 22 years of service. The contrast with Tuberville's civilian background and his habit of posturing as a military authority was glaring. Television networks played the letter aloud, often without commentary, letting his words stand unfiltered. International outlets picked up the story too, framing it as a striking example of how political privilege in America can be exposed by real-world sacrifice. Tuberville's stunned silence became a defining image, a man of power confronted by moral authority he couldn't match. On social media, the clip exploded. Within 24 hours, millions had watched it. Military spouses launched online campaigns to spread the letter further, calling it a perfect articulation of their own struggles with politicians who turned military families into pawns. Comment sections filled with veterans and families thanking Crockett for giving voice to their sacrifices. The political fallout was swift. Tuberville, whose brand had long rested on military posturing, despite never serving, saw his credibility collapse. Families who once supported him began questioning whether he truly represented them, or had only used their loyalty for political gain. Democrats saw in Crockett's moment a rare victory, genuine moral clarity that cut across partisan lines. Republicans, by contrast, struggled. How do you attack a Vietnam veteran's letter to his daughter? How do you justify mocking the lived experience of military families? Polls soon showed public opinion shifting. Voters expressed greater skepticism toward politicians who boasted about military issues without ever serving, and greater respect for those with authentic ties to service. Recruitment centers even reported increased interest from young Americans inspired by Master Sergeant Crockett's example, and his daughter's unwavering defense of military families. In the months that followed, the political landscape shifted. Tuberville found himself increasingly isolated, even within his own party. His once clever maneuver of blocking promotions now appeared petty, harmful, and cruel. Crockett, meanwhile, had established something far more durable than a soundbite, a moment of truth that reset the debate about who has the moral authority to speak for America's service members. Jasmine Crockett's influence on military and veterans issues grew rapidly in the aftermath of the confrontation. Military family advocacy groups began reaching out to her office more often, seeing her not just as a political ally but as someone who truly understood their struggles. Her father's letter had given her a rare kind of moral authority, one rooted in lived experience rather than partisan rhetoric. The exchange sparked a national conversation about the difference between political posturing and authentic service. Master Sergeant Crockett's words showed that real sacrifice and experience carried more weight than any talking point. Veterans organizations seized on the moment, calling for stronger representation of authentic military voices in Washington. Retired officers penned op-eds in major outlets, drawing sharp contrasts between politicians making policy from the sidelines and veterans who had lived its consequences. The letter also inspired a new generation of military families. Young people from service backgrounds said they felt motivated to enter politics, policy, and advocacy after watching Crockett stand her ground with such moral clarity. Universities began using the confrontation as a case study in political communication, showing how authentic experience can overpower manufactured outrage. Military academies even added the letter to ethics and leadership courses, teaching cadets and midshipmen that true authority comes from service and sacrifice, not sound bites. International allies took notice too. Foreign military observers remarked that the exchange reaffirmed American values by showing respect for those who had served. Service members stationed abroad shared the video with their families, grateful to see their experiences voiced in the halls of power. The ripple effects extended into civic life at home. Military spouses who had avoided politics began attending town halls. Veteran service organizations saw surges in membership and volunteerism. Local groups organized letter-writing campaigns to lawmakers, using Master Sergeant Crockett's example as a template for speaking truth to power. The lesson was clear. In an age dominated by political theater, authentic voices still cut through the noise. Master Sergeant Crockett's words reminded the country that service, sacrifice, and moral courage transcend partisan gamesmanship. For Tuberville, what once seemed like a dismissive laugh became a defining mistake, exposing the emptiness of his posture. For Jasmine Crockett, her father's letter elevated her voice far beyond her years in Congress. And for Master Sergeant James Crockett, it was proof that real service still commands respect in American democracy. That day became more than just a heated political moment. It became a testament to the enduring power of truth, spoken by those who have earned the right to speak it.